Welcome to A Canadian Investing in the U.S., a podcast and YouTube channel focused on Canadians buying real estate with host Glenn Sutherland.
Welcome to a new episode of Canadian Investing in the U.S. with Glenn Sutherland. This week, my guest is Thomas Harpointner. Harpointner. Sorry about that. Thomas, you want to start off by just introducing yourself to people so they know who you are?
Yeah, hi Glenn, and glad to be on the show. I'm the founder and CEO of AIS Media. We've for the last 20 years have helped businesses large and small, some Fortune 500s, but many small businesses with their digital marketing strategies. And of course, SEO has always been a big part of that. And more recently, the big shift has been on AI search. And I can tell you within the last 20 years, since we've been in our space, we've seen a bigger change in the last two than in the last 20. So this really is a monumental shift. So glad to be on the show, and it's a fantastic topic.
So you just mentioned AI search. What do you
Mhm.
is that you talking about like SEO stuff, or because there's with AI there's a million different paths to go down.
Yeah, you're so right. And as AI would say, you're right to call that out. If you've used them, then you'll know what I mean. It's an inside joke.
Yeah.
But traditional search has always been this, right? You're a business, you launch a website, you try to optimize that website with good content and technical know-how so that it appears when people search for what you're offering in Google search. And the way Google used to promote your website or show your website is with links, right?
Right.
Unless we're brand new to business, if we've been doing this a while, we all know what those little blue links look like. And the competition was always to get on a first or second page of Google because that's where people would click.
Yeah.
The big shifts that started a few years ago. Of course, the links are still there. Those are the organic links or paid links that people click. But now, if you're on Google, Google launched its own AI called Google Gemini, with their AI overviews, right? Google still dominates the world when it comes to searching for stuff. Most people turn to Google first. So, but the big difference today is that Google or Google Gemini has started answering questions directly versus just giving you a list of links to click, to websites that might answer those questions. So if you want to know what the weather in Toronto is versus the weather in Beijing, Google AI can probably answer that. You don't need to go to weather.com. Also, if you ask, hey, what are the top 10 pediatric dentists in my area that I should consider? Google AI or Google Gemini is increasingly answering those questions without just providing links to those websites. So a lot of questions, stock quotes and weather and this and that. Also some soul searching advice, that people they ask all kinds of things. But these AI search engines, like in Google's case, it's Gemini. We've also probably have heard of ChatGPT, or if you're an XAI fan and you're on X, formerly Twitter, they have their flavor, Grok. That all these AIs have little different personalities, but they're actually getting in the middle of that conversation instead of just sending you to websites. The AIs are providing answers in many cases. If you ask a math question, or if you're asking advice on anything, it's providing an answer. So for a business, why this matters so much is if your business is part of the answer that the AI provides, that's great news because your business is getting branding from the AI, or it's getting links. Often people can click that link and visit that website. But if your business is not part of that answer, or part of that, it's not being cited, then it's your website is suddenly has lost a lot of traffic. And we've done this research for many websites. Traffic is down 40 to 60% in some cases, and they're wondering why. Why has the traffic just completely dropped off, year over year? And for a lot of businesses, it is putting them into panic mode, because website traffic is often directly related to leads or sales. So if the traffic goes, then often the sales and the leads, are dropping off right behind that.
That makes a lot of sense because even I'm just thinking about my own business, right? If someone's like, hey, how do I invest in the US as a Canadian?
Yeah.
Before they would look at the website, they'd come to my website and they'd maybe, find out I have a podcast, go through basically the channels and, look through be at my website. Whereas now the Gemini or whichever AI flavor you're using would just tell you this is some of the steps you should do. And this is some of this, all the things that I would teach them, but they can just get it right from Gemini. So if people are seeing like, hey, I'm losing website traffic, people are just getting the answers direct from the AI, like, how do you make yourself part of that answer? Are you looking to invest in the US? Are you looking for a coaching program that will actually save you money and help you avoid mistakes? My students get discounts on lawyers, attorneys. If you're looking to get an E2 visa, if you're looking for certain software, if you're looking to even speak with CPAs, I have discounts for all these things. If you want to just get on a quick phone call and we can discuss if it's a fit for you, 10-minute phone call, go to glennsutherland.com or at CanadianInvestingInTheUSA.com and book a call.
Yeah, also a very good point. First I want to say when this first started happening and everyone started noticing a decline in traffic to a website. As you can imagine, a lot of clients, many of ours, of course, early on were in panic mode, because they saw a 20% drop in traffic. Not here to mention actual names, but we work with a travel company, a pretty big one, and they saw a drop in traffic. So for the first few months, they were very, very worried. But then we did a follow up with them and said, look, instead of just focusing on traffic to your website, can you tell me how the business is doing? How is your business doing? Are leads up or sales up? And they said, yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, our leads are actually up, and the quality of the leads that our salespeople receive has also gone up. We're trying to figure that out. So what's really interesting about this, Glenn, is that people are turning to AIs for a lot of quick answers to questions that they have, whereas before they would have had to have gone to websites to try to find those answers. But a lot of the questions that the AIs are being asked are not sales ready questions. Like in your business, investing, the AI is not going to handle any investments for you. Right? It's not going to physically invest your money. It's not going to sell your business or find you a buyer for your business. It's acting as an intermediary. So in many cases, it's think of it as a coach or as a consultant or an executive assistant, which is helping, but it's not closing any deals. So what our travel client noticed is, yes, site traffic is down a bit, but the qualified people, the people that are visiting our website tend to be more sales ready. So the AIs are doing a good job in educating people about a lot of the do's and don'ts. But to your point is, what brands are the AIs recommending? If you have a cybersecurity issue and you're an IT guy and say, we need a new cybersecurity solution, what do you recommend? If you're CrowdStrike, hypothetically, you want to be listed or you want to be mentioned by that AI. So to your question is, well, how do you do that? And it takes us back to old school SEO. At the end of the day, content is still king. You still have to create useful, helpful, valuable content that in the past we were creating for people, right? The type of content that people might read. But now, more and more, the AIs are reading that content first before it even gets to people. So the AIs are analyzing all of the content that's out there, and going through sites like Wikipedia. They're going to Reddit. In many cases, they're scraping social media. And the AIs are desperately trying to provide desperately trying to be a great assistant to its users, and they're trying to provide helpful and useful content. So if you're a business creating blog articles and good, valuable social media posts, and you're formatting and optimizing that content properly for the AIs to actually know that it exists, then you're in a really good place. Because yes, traffic to the site might be down, but qualified traffic might be way up. So with the travel client, early, they were a little bit in panic mode, and then they recalibrated and realized, wow, our sales team has more qualified leads than ever. This thing might actually be working. So now we're all doubling down on that effort and expanding it. But the type of content that the AIs want is the stuff that has to be easily indexable, answers to questions that people are asking. If you're a financial advisor and you're trying to get more financial, clients, then you should be thinking of yourself on how to become a greater authority and an expert in your field. So the AI and the search engines recognize you as a trusted advisor, a trusted resource. And it's the same like always, people who've written books, people who appear on, podcasts, mainstream media, anyone who's published blog articles or had those articles published in magazines and newspapers are seen as more as higher authority type figures that the AIs will trust more. So because at the end of the day, if the AIs are providing recommendations to shady sources, then users are going to get, they're going to get frustrated and say, yeah, this AI is dumb. I'm not going to use it anymore. It's giving me a bunch of outdated stuff. So.
Okay. In my head, I'm still trying to wrap my head around one part, which, this might be a dumb question. But if so, say you hear like, I go to AI and you're talking about a travel agency and you're just like, hey, where do I get the cheapest travel? Right. And maybe you work for Travel ABC and you've been posting all these articles. Like the AI isn't going to go to Travel ABC, right? It's because it's still, and even if it did put you there, that would show up as another click through. So they would still showing lots of click throughs to the website. Or am I missing something here?
If you're a Canadian interested in U.S. real estate, there's a 60-second quiz that will tell you the safest strategy based on your specific situation. Because here's the thing, there isn't one way to invest in the U.S. as a Canadian. The right move depends on your budget, your risk tolerance, and what you actually want to get out of this. Most Canadians I talk to are stuck in the same spot. They know the U.S. opportunity is real, they've done some research, but they're sitting on cash because they don't want to guess their way through setting up corporate structures, cross-border taxes, and picking the wrong market for the first deal. The mistake isn't lack of information, it's that generic U.S. investing advice doesn't account for your situation as a Canadian. It doesn't account for your capital, your timeline, and your appetite to be hands-off or hands-on. So we built a 60-second quiz that gives you a personalized answer. Which U.S. investment strategy fits you right, whether you're actually ready to buy or what to fix first, and the smartest next step based on where you're at. It's free, it takes about a minute, and you'll get a customized game plan at the end. And it's not a generic PDF. Go to CanadianInvestingInTheUSA.com/quiz. It's also linked in the show notes. Take the quiz, get your game plan, stop guessing. You don't need to figure this out alone. You just need to know what your next move is.
Well, you're half right.
Okay.
Yes, there
That's fair.
are millions. There are tens of millions and more with websites on the internet. So is the AI going to scrape tens of millions of websites all the time? Probably not. It's just incredibly inefficient. But Google is the largest database of stuff, right? Google has been indexing and organizing websites for many, many, many years, way before AI was even a thing.
Right.
And also, I want to point out that Google, even before AI was a thing, Google has been acting as a gatekeeper long before AI. For instance, if you go to Google and look for hotel rates, Google has been publishing hotel rates directly on Google. Same with flights. You can go to Google Flights and it's giving you flight quotes. Google launched Google Finance and it's giving you stock quotes, right? You don't have to go to E-Trade to get a stock quote or go to the Wall Street Journal. So Google has been providing answers to a lot of questions before AI was even a thing. But to your question of now, if you're a travel guy and you want to drive more traffic to your travel agency, how do you do that? Well, one very effective way is to create blog articles, but in a certain format so that the blog article provides information, but also provides a Q&A at the bottom of that. It's called a schema, a Q&A schema. So if your blog article provides top 7 to 10 most commonly answers to questions that people ask, then that schema is indexed by Google's Gemini much more easily than the entire website. So it's looking for those, snippets. Like if we went to Google right now and said, hey, what are the top 10 travel tips, the do's and don'ts if I'm traveling to Europe, it's going to give you answers very quickly and then also cite the sources of some of those answers. And you'll find that the sources it cites, the content is formatted in a certain way, and it's much more AI friendly, of an AI friendly layout. The other factor is if you're writing a blog article and that blog article is published in an industry publication or a magazine, or it's cited by other sources that link to that blog article, those linking factors, those authoritative factors, then tell the AI that this is a credible source, that, this guy, Glenn, maybe, Glenn Travel Advisor, he's a trusted source of somebody that we should go to on a regular basis, just like the news media has its own talking heads that they invite on the show on a regular basis because they're good guests and they're knowledgeable and people like to listen to who they are. So these AIs are trying to figure out their short list of trusted resources that they can turn to for high quality content. So publishing a blog article once and then just hoping for the world to beat a path to your door is probably not going to happen. But if you're a regular publisher, in your case, a regular podcaster, it is important to recognize that these AIs are not just reading content anymore. They're also starting to, read videos. If we talked about YouTube a little bit. If you're uploading a video to YouTube, YouTube automatically creates captions, right? It transcribes the video. And, if you add a thorough description under that video that thoroughly explains what's included, well, Google owns YouTube, and that YouTube content often shows up in Google search results. So publishing videos to YouTube that are transcribed is also then becomes very helpful as a signal to Google that you're a credible source, especially if people are watching and sharing and commenting and saving your content. So for businesses that are trying to figure out how do I get ahead in this AI world, well, creating the type of content that the AIs are not going to create on their own is good, right? I mean, AI is not creating videos from scratch. It's not just coming up with random ideas on its own. Yeah, the AIs are basically organizing and repeating and sharing and adding to it a little bit. But for the most part, the AIs are not imagining the world of tomorrow. They're basically just telling you what's happening today, what has happened in the past. And just like a very, very good executive assistant, they're organizing it for you in a way that makes it easy to digest. So as a business and a content creator, publishing stuff to your blog and then putting it out on social media and even maybe converting it into videos and audio files, all of those things are super helpful, if you want the AI to recognize you as a trusted resource.
So maybe I make sure I got this right, but it sounds like there's a preference to have, typed out text over video, right? Or if you have video, to have a transcript or a description or something, because it sounds like it's going to be more work for the AI to transcribe this all themselves, correct?
Well, if you're uploading a video to YouTube, YouTube can transcribe on its own.
Right.
It listens to the entire video, right? And it's not always 100% correct. If people slur their speech or they have a dialect, it may get some of those, some of that stuff wrong. But it already transcribes. So to have a transcription of a video then creates a content that you can publish in a blog and say, okay, here's the video feed if you want to listen to it. Here's the audio stream. Some people just like to listen to audio, as you mentioned. And then other people just like to read real quick, right? In the information age we are in today, let's say about 70% of internet content is consumed on mobile devices. We know that. A little different from industry to industry, but on average, 70% of internet usage is mobile-based. What does that tell us? Well, the mobile screens are a lot smaller than big desktops, and attention spans are a lot shorter. People are on their mobile phones while they're on the go. They're in the elevator. They shouldn't be looking at their phone while in their car, but they do at the airport. But they're on the go. So the type of content that gets digested is very short form content that gets to the point quickly. And if people see an article that really captures their interest, providing them a link to the full story, the 1,500, 2,500 word article, is definitely helpful. But you're not going to get anyone to read a 3,000 word article or listen to a 40-minute podcast if you don't provide something at the very beginning that captures their interest and their imagination, right? So it comes down to just really good copywriting and content creation, and that's why a dentist or a lawyer would hire a content creator and not try to do it themselves, because it is a business in itself. Just like, video editing, optimization is very different than creating the original content. And it does help to have a team who understand what they're doing. But as a business owner, it's also helpful to know the type of work that needs to be done and what the objective is, so you can set realistic expectations. That, if someone comes to you and says, look, let's create 4 blog articles and we'll get you found in AI search, worldwide. Well, that's just not going to happen. You do need to do it consistently on a regular basis, and then success breeds success in that regard.
Okay, that makes sense. And then where does your company come in on this? Do they create the content for you? They teach you how to do the content? How does this all look?
Yeah, right. It's because it's different from client to client. We work with some companies that are pretty big brands and they have internal marketing teams, and they might plug us in and as an addition to their existing team to help them in areas where they're weak.
Okay.
And of course that's different from company to company, right? And then for smaller businesses, their team is much smaller, or their teams wear multiple hats. If we're dealing with, let's say, an aesthetic dentist, right? The dentist is involved, is also the business owner, but also the dentist. And he may have a few dentists working with them, but it's not something that they can do on a daily basis. So they'll need more help from us, right? But at the end of the day, it's their business. So they need to understand who their clients are, patients are, who they're going after, what makes them different, who their main competitors are, and what's the real message that they want to put out into the world. If I ask, look, if AI is going to cite your business, what do you want AI to say about you? And what are the type of conversations that you want to be part of? And also, what do you not want to be part of? A financial planner shouldn't be really answering healthcare questions, nor should a doctor provide financial advice. But and while that sounds like it's common sense, today what's happening, and which is kind of scary, is that Google has started indexing social media content, and that social media content is showing up in search results. If you go to Google Images and you could, I haven't done this on you, but you might do it for yourself and just search your name on Google Images. You might find yourself on Google Images. I know I find myself. But you might be surprised at what comes up. There's some Instagram pictures of me out there, from a year or two ago. They're not awful, but I didn't expect them to be found in Google. Like, wow, it's kind of an awkward picture at this event. Why did it pick that picture of all others? So it does require us to be, have a little bit more of a heightened sense of awareness that search and social media is converging more and more. And, these AI search engines are kind of the middlemen, trying to connect everything together for its users. So when you say, like, who's the best travel agent in my area, if it's Glenn Travel Advisors, then yes, you want to be found, but you probably don't want some embarrassing stuff of you to be out there, some, crazy party pictures. You say, well, I don't want my frat boy times out there. So it's important to know, both the benefits and the potential pitfalls, and, working with a team like us, or many other very, very talented folks out there that do what we do. We use very advanced tools to stay on top of what's trending, what people are in fact searching for, so you don't have to guess, and the type of keywords that you should be writing about if you want to get found at the top of your industry, so that you're not just going at it blind. And then we step in and help wherever the help is needed. And sometimes it's at an advisory role, sometimes it's a full-blown production and publishing role.
No, that's you just went over a lot of stuff there that I think a lot of people like really needed, may have just skipped over in their head. But like you talked a lot about guessing and assuming, and honestly, that's how I used to run a lot of this. Is just you think this is what people are looking for, you assume because of this that you think they're looking for this, and until you sit down and actually do those exercises and create ideal client avatars and go through the whole process, you don't really.
Yeah.
Even the AI isn't able to generate good information for you because they don't know enough about you or what you're trying to actually accomplish. So
you have to train the AI. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or just make stuff up. And sometimes that stuff is not real. Yeah. So
yeah, and it makes assumptions.
I'll just say, look, back, for folks that are really old school advertisers, they might remember this retail store, John Wanamaker's, in New York, many, many, many years ago. They were at the top of their game. And, they said, look, 50%, and John Wanamaker was a real guy, before even the Sears and Roebuck days. But I'm using this as an example only because he said back then, in the early 1900s, that 50% of all my advertising is wasted I just don't know which 50%. When we got into the business of the internet, we thought, well, what's amazing about the internet is that everything is quantifiable, everything is trackable. You can put a number on stuff, you can see all the charts, you can see all the data, so that a lot less money should be wasted. And while that's true to some degree, there's a lot of more information out there than ever before. It's still, at the end of the day, people probably waste 50% of all their energy and their effort because they're guessing what people are searching for without knowing, or they're trying to guess what's going to be hot, what's trending, what people care about. And sometimes you do have to follow your gut instinct, but there are tools available today that will actually tell you specifically what people are searching for in AI overviews today related to a certain industry. So if you're a retail brand and you're trying to sell, hot shoes or, TVs, you can know now, what TV brands are trending, what people care about, without just randomly creating content and hoping for the best. So it does help to have that radar available to you.
Oh, and you're obviously a smart guy and understand this stuff. So when someone's listening to this podcast and they're going, this is something that I'm lacking, who is the person that should be reaching out, or what type of company or what kind of needs should that person have to reach out to you?
Well, depending on the business that they're in, they need to understand what their business goals are. So it ought to be, a business that's
But do they
established
need to
well
know
enough.
that before they call you?
Well, we'll provide a free consult. We
Okay.
consult. We probably spend hundreds of hours a year just doing free consultations for 30
Okay.
minutes. But you should be an established business, understand what you're selling, who you're selling it to, and what your main pain points are that you're trying to solve. If you're a new dental practice and you're brand new in a neighborhood and you're trying to make a splash, that's good to know. But
Yeah.
if you're an established practice with 20 years and somehow you've been losing traffic, losing customers, it's also helpful just to be honest and to be clear with us about where you currently are, where you're trying to go, where your strengths are, and where your perceived weaknesses are. Because it's just like consulting, your doctor or a financial advisor, your CPA, a good attorney. If you have a legal issue, just understand where you are, what the challenges are, and be open and honest. With your capabilities, your budget, some of your internal challenges, and then we can be very, very helpful. I mean, even if you don't become a client, we love providing free and helpful advice. In fact, if you go to our website at aismedia.com, we publish blog articles on a regular basis on this exact topic. But the type of articles that you can give to anyone, you can use them yourself, you can give them to your marketing guy and say, put this information to use right now. And of course, educating folks and on this podcast is helpful, right? I think
Of course. Yeah.
I like to believe that your listeners are getting something out of this. So yes, we do provide. I love providing, helpful, useful information that people can put to work in their business, right away.
Love it. So someone's interested. They're like, hey, this is a gap. I have an established business. Where do they go? What do they do? Do they just go to that website? How do they schedule that consultation, or how do they figure out if this is right for them?
Yeah, jump on aismedia.com. That's a good jumping off point. You're welcome also to connect with us on social media. Obviously, I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn. All of our links are there. I mean, you can connect with me on X at Tom Harpointner if you can spell that name right. Hopefully,
Well, it's going to be in the name of the show. So
I should just set up 5 profiles with all different versions of the name, to capture everyone. It's not an easy one, but jump on aismedia.com, poke around our blog articles, our client case studies, and if there's something you think we may be able to help with, or some questions you'd like answered, please feel free to reach out to us. We're here to help. We're headquartered in Atlanta, but our clients are nationwide. So, great team of people, anxious to help. We've been doing it for over 20 years, so I think we're pretty good at what we do today.
you sound very knowledgeable, so I think so. Thomas, thanks so much for coming on the show. Lots of value, lots of different ways of thinking about these sort of, can't talk, but you know what I mean. But thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, Glenn, it was my absolute pleasure to meet you, and happy to be on the show. And
That was a nice video. Bye.